So I found this old warehouse cart on Craigslist and had seen several of them refinished and refurbished into coffee tables, so I thought I'd pick it up and refinish it, especially since the guy on Craigslist only wanted $60 for it, and I've seen them online for $800 to $1,000 after they've been refinished. This one turns out to be a nutting cart, which is apparently a rather popular brand name and kind of collectible in good shape. It's got all the original metal, although dirty. All the metal parts are original, with the exception of a couple of angle iron pieces that have been welded on. And the top, at some point in its life, has been replaced with just a sheet of plywood. So the first step in the process was going to be to get it taken apart and get it cleaned up. The most complicated piece is going to be getting these welded on angle irons off of the original brackets, where somebody had put them on each of the corners to protect them over the years. But all the metal parts had the original factory stamps, the original bearings, and so it looked like it was going to be a fun project. The first part was to get it apart. Getting that plywood off was going to be the biggest struggle, or the first part of the struggle, because it was fastened with 2 or 3 inch framing staples. So it took a little work to get those off. Then the next part of the process was to get these welded on angle iron brackets off. It was on the front 2 corner brackets, and then also on the handle. Ended up just buying a grinder with a metal cutting wheel and making a lot of sparks in the garage. Didn't actually get any video or pictures of the process of taking it apart, but got before and afters. Here you can see the angle iron that was welded onto the handle. I don't know if it was for mounting things to or to protect it or whatever reason, but those had to get cut off and sanded smooth as well. So once I got everything taken apart, the first thing I did was get all the metal components cleaned up. Here you can see all the metal parts have been cleaned and refinished. Getting the angle iron cut off was really the biggest part of the process. I had not done much of that kind of thing in the past. And then it was just cleaning. Soaked all the pieces in a bucket of degreaser overnight, then took them down to the car wash, hosed them off with the power sprayer, and then spent a couple hours with the wire brush getting them all cleaned up. From there it was getting them painted. I used a Rust-Oleum paint and primer, spray-on hammered finish to kind of try to retain original metal look to it, and I really liked the way those turned out. And then also put a coat of clear on it to try to protect it from rubbing off at some point in the future. Next up was the wood frame. I wanted to retain as much of the original wood frame as I could. It was split in a couple of places and had been repaired a few times over the years. Once I got all the metal framing pieces off of it, some of the ends were split, so I glued and clamped those together and let those sit for a couple of hours. And then instead of using a sandpaper or anything like that on it so that it would change the size or shape of the wood in the frame, I just used a scraper to get all of the years worth of gunk and goop off of it, and also take kind of the top layer of the wood down so that it was smooth. And then once all that was done, I could go into the refinishing process. For refinishing it, I used kind of a combination of homegrown stain plus a little bit of paint plus a little bit of store-bought stain to kind of achieve the antique look that I was looking for, and I really kind of liked the way the finished product turned out. I also put a couple of coats of polyurethane on it to maintain its look over the years, keep it from getting damaged at all. Next up was the top. For the top, I bought some reclaimed boxcar flooring. I actually bought a damaged piece so that it didn't cost me quite as much money as it could have if I'd bought a full piece in good condition. Although none of the boxcar floorings are in actually good condition, and that's kind of the purpose of the boxcar flooring, is that you want the distressed look. But to deal with my damaged piece, I had to plane it down and cut it in half and glue the edges together to get the size and the width that I wanted. Once I got it planed down, I had to artificially age it so it did look old and refinished and distressed. I applied a solution of vinegar and steel wool You can see the first 5 minutes started acting pretty fast. After 15 minutes, it got nice and dark and gave it a nice antique look. And then once I got the look that I wanted, I could go ahead and start cutting it down and getting it glued up to the right size that I needed for the table. So here we see it's cut in half, ready to be glued. Because it was a damaged piece, it was a little bit of work getting the edges to match up right. Once I did get them matched up, I applied plenty of glue and put some nice big clamps on it and let it sit in the clamps overnight. While it was the top was getting clamped up and ready to go, I worked on the base to get it ready. I went ahead and did the final assembly, put all the metal back on. I managed to get the brackets pretty smooth after having to cut all the welded angle iron off of them. All the bolts had to be replaced because they were all damaged by the welding process. I'd wanted to retain those but wasn't able to. And then also at the front, all the hardware had to be replaced because all the ends had to get cut off when the welding and the angle iron got cut loose. So the base is ready for the top. So the next step is to get the final top ready to go. Obviously I had to re-distress it since I'd planed off all the natural distressing from its life as a boxcar floor. So I got it stained and refinished and distressed with a hammer and some screwdrivers, some nuts and bolts and things to kind of ding it up a little bit. And then it's ready to go back on the cart. So now the top and the base are together and it's in the house. Really pleased with the way it turned out. Actually considered building it to sell it, pending approval from Denise, but she seems to like it, so I think it's going to stay around the house for a while. It was a lot of fun. I keep an eye out for some other carts that can be refinished. I actually found some just wheels and stuff and an axle. I may try to build a replica from scratch and see how that turns out.